In the last video, I talked about Jane Austen and her connections to Warren Hastings. In this small part of the Cotswolds where Jane Austen's extended family lived and Warren Hastings lived, there were four families that own much of the wealth and the land and more than their share of the local gossip. The four families were the Lees in Addlestrop, who I covered a couple videos ago, Charles Cockerell at Seasoncote, who I will cover in a future video at some point, Warren Hastings at Daylesford, who I talked about last time, and the fourth family is the Dashwoods. In particular, Sir Francis Dashwood, the second Baronet, and his family who lived in Bourton-on-the-Hill. All of them had a connection to Jane Austen, and all of them, in ways large and small, influenced her writing. Jane, for example, borrowed the Dashwood name for the central family in her book, Sense and Sensibility. And Mrs. Dashwood in Sense and Sensibility lives in Barton, which sounds a lot like Bourton. This is Bourton-on-the-Hill, a village, a few houses along a road and a church. Why did she use the Dashwood name? Well, Francis Dashwood, the second Baronet, was notorious for running a club in the 1750s and the 1760s, just before Jane was born, called the Hellfire Club. And as a kid, Jane heard whispering about this provocative neighbor of her mother's side of the family. Love and friendship was the motto that the club had stitched on their badges. And 15-year-old Jane's first known short novel was titled Love and Friendship. Jane heard rumors about the club, about secretive meetings that took place in Medmenham Abbey and in the caves in West Wickham, a spot that was sort of between London and Bourton-on-the-Hill. Poets, members of Parliament were members, including the Earl of Sandwich, and the famous American revolutionary Benjamin Franklin was a friend of Francis Dashwood and occasionally attended the Hellfire Club meetings. So while in those years before Jane's time, the Dashwood center of gravity was a bit out towards London, West Wickham, the notoriety of the events that took place there caused Francis' half-nephew John Dashwood, who, when he inherited the baronetcy, to spend more time in Bourton-on-the-Hill. He was a few years older than Jane. So by disassociating himself with the central place of the Hellfire Club meetings, spending more time in Bourton-on-the-Hill, he actually brought his family name into greater circulation in the town gossip and during Jane's lifetime. This is the church here in Bourton-on-the-Hill. Some similarities exist between the real Dashwoods and the Dashwoods in her book Sense and Sensibility. For example, the Dashwoods Lodge is a place called Burton House, which is a symmetrical country house, making it similar in form to Jane's Barton Cottage. This is Burton House here. You can visit the gardens some days from the spring into the fall. It's a small garden, but known for being as stunning late in the year as it is in the spring. I'll show a few photos from the Burton House garden. I visited it in the spring of 2024. There are a lot of popular gardens in this part of the country. The Batsford Arboretum, Seasoncote, Cotswold Lavender. It's in a very small circle. Hidcote and Kitsgate, a few miles north. And most of them are probably a bit more popular than Burton House, but Burton's a wonderful garden. It's calm. It has a tea house. And this is the real-life Burton House here. Another similarity between the real life and Jane's novel, Sir Francis Dashwood, the first Baronet, was known for acquiring land around his mansion, which the fictional Dashwoods also do in the fictional Barton Cottage. Another connection, Sense and Sensibility, opens with the fictional John Dashwood talking with his new wife Fanny about how he intends to share some of his newly inherited fortune with his stepmother and his daughters. She talks him out of it, of course. In real life, Jane's brother Edward married into money and similarly didn't support her and her sisters. And one last connection. John Dashwood, he was the one who was living there during Jane's time, had a wife named Marianne Dashwood, and in Sense and Sensibility, one of the Dashwood's daughters' name is Marianne Dashwood. Well, Jane may well have met either John or Marianne Dashwood during her visits to Addlestrop. Well, that's actually an interesting question. Did Jane meet John and Marianne? Jane and her family went to Addlestrop in midsummer 1794. I found a copy of Marianne Dashwood's diary from 1794 in the Bodleian Library. Her writing is a bit hard to make out, but I did find an entry showing Marianne visited Addlestrop in February of that year. Well, speaking of the Bodleian Library, I've shared manuscripts from the Bodleian in most of my videos so far, and I came to hear about the Bodleian a year or two ago. I was in a church, and the church warden came by, and as I was talking to him, he said that he had found these pen and watercolor images of his church and others in the area done by an artist, J.C. Buckler, around the year 1800, and had said that they were in the Bodleian Library and told me how he had been able to see them. The Bodleian Library is part of the University of Oxford. It's not a lending library, but if you have a legitimate research interest, you can apply to visit. So I applied, saying I was researching the area of Oxford and the Cotswolds, and they called me in to the library one day and to review my application, and they sort of made me take an oath, which is apparently changed very little since the 1700s. It includes lines such as, "I will not bring into the library any fire or flame, nor smoke in the library." It's an amazing collection of materials, and I'll share more of them in future videos. This is one of the reading rooms here. And here are a few more photos from Bourton House. One of the features of the garden is this reflecting pool with the two swans, though certainly these were added a bit later. Well, anyway, thanks to Alan Firth and his book Jane Austen's Regency Dashwoods for some of the stories from this video. My last video was also on Jane Austen and her connections to Warren Hastings. And I'll stay with Jane Austen for one more video and look at some of the locations in Bath that inspired her. See you then.